Hi everybody, my name is Tazmyn from the channel Tea Books and Tazmyn, and welcome back to Penguin Platform. Today I'm going to be talking to you about some of my favourite books that have been adapted into films or TV shows, or TV shows and films that I love that have been adapted from books which are on my TBR. We're going to talk about why I love them, what I didn't love about the original or the adaptation, and cry together, because nothing's perfect in this world. Of course, I couldn't quite succinctly fit all of that into the title, so that's basically a lie. That's not the truth. The general consensus, the widespread belief is that the book is always better. From my experience, that has always been the case. Okay, the first book / series that I'm going to tell you about is no surprise to anybody that knows me. If you're here from my channel, you're just gonna roll your eyes. And that is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I love His Dark Materials. Predominantly Northern Lights. The Southern Life I didn't love as much, but in hindsight, it's really stuck in my head, so I'm definitely gonna have to reread it. And unfortunately, The Amber Spyglass I haven't finished reading because it put me in a major slump at about like 60 pages. So, okay, the book series gets worse as it goes on from my experience so far, but the original Northern Lights, one of the best books I've ever read. I want to just tattoo the whole book across my entire body. For those of you that don't know, the first book, I'm just going to talk about the first book, follows a young girl called Lyra Belacqua and... Right, how? Okay, so Lyra is in an alternate universe to ours. Wait, fuck, how do I... Parallel world, very similar to us, but in Lyra's world, the people's souls live outside of their body and they are manifested as creatures, as animals. Now, when the person hits like puberty, when they start to settle down hormonally, their creature also settles down into one animal that reflects their personality, their inner spirit. But up until that point, it changes. It flips because the child doesn't yet know what it's going to be. So Lyra, oh, actually, hang on. This is good timing because I actually just received like I ordered it online. My Lyra with Pan Pop Funko. This is Lyra with Pan and the little alethiometer, which is like a magical golden compass. Fantasies are hard to explain. So Lyra lives in Oxford, is in Oxford University. In her world there is also an Oxford University, but she lives in Jordan College, which if you know anything about Oxford University over here, we don't have a Jordan College. Her uncle is Lord Asriel, and he is a very, very important man. He is a scholar, he is an adventurer and expeditionist. And one day Lyra overhears in a meeting that he's having something mentioned called dust with a capital D. She's like, but dust? Why are they talking about it as though it's so significant? Like it's just dirt that you wash off your... No girl. This dust is about to ruin your life. It's magical and fantastical, and she learns about alternate universes and about how to travel between them. There are magical polar bears who can talk. They are from Svalbard. They have a whole empire all of their own. You have Lee Scoresby, who's one of my favourite characters, who is an aeronaut. He's like an astronaut / hot air balloon driver / adventurer / kind of a bit of a con man. And on her journey to discover what dust is, her best friend from Oxford is kidnapped. She sets out to try and figure out if there is a link between all of these children that are going missing and this mysterious thing that she's discovered called dust. It's so good, it's so emotional. I have cried so many times at Philip Pullman's books, it's obscene. But now let me tell you about the adaptations! If you've been living under a rock, you may not know that the BBC and HBO have done an adaptation of the first 2 books so far of the His Dark Materials series. I believe there is just going to be one more, which will be concluding The Amber Spyglass. And quite frankly, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. It's going to ruin my life. I haven't even let myself finish watching final 2 episodes, I think it is, of season 2, because the worst thing that happens in fiction takes place at the end of book 2, and I'm just not. It's been like a year since it's come out. I'm still not emotionally prepared to see that happen on screen. No thanks. And there is also a film of book 1 called The Golden Compass. This came out in 2007 and I loved it. I was 9 when it came out. It took over my entire life. I cared about nothing else. I wanted to be Lyra. In hindsight, I definitely fancied Lyra. And even to this day, when I rewatched it about a year ago, it still stood up. It was still a great film. But unfortunately, it didn't make as much money as they were hoping, so they didn't get to carry on making more film adaptations of the books. So the film ends on a massive cliffhanger, and I was incredibly sorely disappointed. Now let's compare all three, shall we? We have the books/book. I'm just gonna talk about Northern Lights because that is the only one that has been adapted across all of the platforms. There's also a play, by the way, which is in, I believe, 2 parts. It's just called His Dark Materials, and it was on at the National Theatre. So if you live in the UK, if you have access to going to the National Theatre archives, that's definitely something that I plan on doing when the world's slightly more back to normal. You can go and watch that. Also La Belle Sauvage, which is book 1 in the sequel series called The Book of Dust. That has been adapted for stage and is going to be on at the Bridge Theatre in London at the end of this year. So again, sorry non-Londoners, look that up, check that out, maybe I'll see you at the theatre there. So, my thoughts and feelings are that the book is god tier and cannot be touched. There is nothing about that book that I would change. It is perfection. The film, I loved. It is such an important nostalgic just bundle of joy to me. They did swap around 2 big events that happen in the book chronologically in the film. I understand to a degree why they would have done that, but it didn't work. Unfortunately, it just didn't make sense in terms of the character doing those things in that order. And then there's the TV show. That is truer to the books, definitely. And they add some scenes and they add some more depth to certain characters as well, which is so well done, absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite hit the spot for me. I don't know if it's to do with some of the actors, maybe they're just not quite as good as I was hoping. Maybe I'm just too in love with the characters portrayed in the film that I grew up with. Maybe it's the writing, maybe it's the directing. There are lots of little bits, certain moments that I'm like, that doesn't work, or that scene doesn't work, and I just feel a bit let down, which is gutting because the production quality and the production values of it is so, it's stunning. It's beautiful to watch, and I do love it, and I will still be carrying on with it when I can finally bring myself to finish season 2. But if you've seen the show and felt a bit disappointed, don't let that put you off the book. I've had quite a few people say that they watched the show and they were like, it's all right, but like, whatever. Read the goddamn book. Read the book. Read the damn book. This is the newest edition that I bought of it. I have a lot of editions of this series. Read it. The next adaptation I want to talk about is The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I read the book when I was 17, so that's like 6 years ago now. Oh my god, how was school that long ago? Blah. Anyway, I read it for A-level. I listened to the audiobook and I loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. It's still one of my favourite books. I recommended it to my dad, and bless him, he read it and he was like, it's fantastic, but I would never ever want to watch it because it's just so devastating and traumatic. When I read the book in school, there was 1 or potentially more adaptations of it, old films. But since then, again, you'd only not know this if you've been living under a rock, Hulu has released a very, very successful adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale. I have only watched maybe 4 episodes of the first season, and I'm going to carry on with it one day, and let me tell you why I wasn't able to, why I had to temporarily DNF it. So for those of you that don't know, The Handmaid's Tale is set in a world called Gilead, which is some futuristic version of America, and we follow a character called Offred. She is only referred to as Offred. We don't know anything about her. We don't know her real identity. That's in the book. The TV adaptation goes beyond the end of the book, so the book is only series 1 and everything after that is new stuff. But this is a majorly messed up dystopian world in which there is a totalitarian government. You have absolutely 0 freedoms. Everybody has a very regimented, restricted role to play in society. And Offred is a handmaid. That means that she is a fertile woman who has been given to a commander or general, someone important, and she has to have his baby. His wife is infertile along with a lot of other women in this society, and people that are high up enough in this disastrous world are given handmaids to procreate with, and that is it. That's all they are used for. They are just things, they are amenities for these rich families. And it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrific, and it's one of the best things I've ever read. Let's compare. The new TV show is very, very accurate to the book, but it has also added a lot of new elements. Now, if you're going to watch or read The Handmaid's Tale, definitely make sure you look up content warnings beforehand because it covers every topic. And the thing that spoil it, Okay, yes, this is technically a spoiler. So if you don't want to know anything about this, go away until this is gone. But I feel like it's very important for people to know that this topic is dealt with in the TV show. It wasn't in the book, so when I watched it, I was completely taken off guard. And it is dealt with in the same darkness and severity as all the other topics are. So it really, really hit me. It messed me up for days. And that is that Offred's friend of Glenn is gay. Queerness and homosexuality isn't something that's even touched on in the book. It was written in like the 90s, I think, and being a straight woman, it wasn't necessarily something that was on Margaret Atwood's radar. And so I'm incredibly grateful that it was encompassed and addressed in the TV show, because if the United States, or a part of the United States, were to become the sort of world that Gilead is, there are going to be all sorts of people of all sorts of genders and sexualities and races and minorities that are going to be impacted by this. And so it was really great to see them think about and take into account how their society would impact people that aren't just blonde-haired, blue-eyed, straight, cis white women, you know? But like I said, dark. Dark, 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 dark. If you're queer, just look after yourself, because messed me up big time. Oh! I really, really want to rewatch it and finish it, because it's fantastic, but it will make you want to die. So you have to make sure that you're in a good mental state to go into the TV show. The book, I feel like, is much more contemplative as opposed to being aggressive in the disruption and disturbances of the world that they live in, because it's Offred's internal monologue. Yeah, food for thought. Don't watch The Handmaid's Tale. No, give it a go, but make sure that you are okay that day. The third and final book that I'm going to talk about, which is one that I have read and watched the adaptation of, is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Now, I read this book. Oh my god, I read it 10 years ago. The fact that I've done anything 10 years ago that is still of importance to me now is baffling, because 10 years ago would have been me being a 3-year-old. Whereas now, 10 years ago, is me being a teenager at some of my most informative years. It's okay, we're not gonna spiral today. I read To Kill a Mockingbird when I was in year 9. It wasn't for exams or anything, but it was one of the texts that we were studying in English literature class. And it really moved me. It was the first book I remember reading in school that I fully understood. Around that time we also read Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and while I did certainly enjoy it, it felt so far removed from my life in terms of time and personal experiences that it felt like I was reading about history. And while To Kill a Mockingbird is historical in that it's set in the 1960s, that's still close enough to our lives, and a lot of the themes, unfortunately, that happen in To Kill a Mockingbird are still very applicable to the society that we live in now, which is depressing. So, To Kill a Mockingbird, for those of you that don't know, again, you must have been living under a rock if you don't, is told from the perspective of a young girl called Scout. Now she is like, how old is she, like 6? According to Google, she is 6 to 9 years old. She is a young white girl in a southern state in the United States of America. She has an older brother called Jem, they're very, very close, and her father is called Atticus. They are the Finch family. Now Atticus is a lawyer, and he takes on the case of a black man that has been incorrectly accused of raping a white woman. Once again, dark, dark themes. I'm actually very grateful about the fact that I did study this in school, because to talk about sexual assault and rape in any concept is big for the education system. It was amazing that we were taught about the concept of it, and then of course all of the awful, awful racism that we experienced throughout the book. Tom Robinson is the black man who is accused of rape, and he is just a lovely, charming young gentleman who is just helping out and doing his bit in the neighborhood. I won't go into details because spoilers, and you know, read the book, but what the town and the society does to him is horrendous. And reading about Atticus and him as a white person in a position of power, doing everything in his power to try and help. It doesn't feel like a white savior complex though, because he's not like the only white man that's trying to save the day. He is one of many, many white people, and he's the only one that is actually doing good. So I don't feel like this book is a white savior sort of book. But then the film, I say that as though the film then is a white savior thing. It's not. The book and the film are, from my memory, very, very similar. The film came out, wow, the film came out in 1962. So it came out at the time that it was set. So stuff like that would have been literally going on in your neighborhood when you went to watch the film. That could easily have been going on where you were growing up. They've both left massive, massive impacts on me, and I feel very lucky that I read and watched them at such a young age. It's not just the story about Tom Robinson and Atticus Finch and the legal stuff. You also get Jem and Scout as children, and there's a scary man in a haunted house down the road, and them villainizing him and learning to overcome judgment. It's a really brilliant character-driven story that analyzes humanity and what it means to care and how we love. And it's fantastic. The book and the film both recommend highly. Do it. Go do it. Go do it! Now on to some that I haven't read, the first of which is one that I've read the beginning of. I reckon I read about a quarter of this and then just didn't pick it up again. Not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I was an idiot. And that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Now I want to read the whole thing and watch the film. I don't know if the film is going to live up to it, because what I read of the book, it was truly just breathtaking. It's written from the perspective of death and it takes place in Nazi Germany. It predominantly follows a young girl called Liesel, and she is a Aryan German, and her foster family, lots of family backstory as well, all very traumatic, all very depressing. She is taken in by a German family because they're in Germany, and they don't like the Nazis, and they hide a Jew in their house, and it's about the life of normal people at that time, but from the perspective of a child, and also from the perspective of death. It's so poetic, and the imagery in the book is gorgeous. So I want to read it, I want to finish reading it, and also watch the film. Geoffrey Rush is in the film. Geoffrey Rush can do no wrong. Now the last two I'm going to talk about, I'm sort of going to clump them together because I have a similar relationship with both of them. The first one is Emma by Jane Austen, and the second one is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I haven't read either of them, but the adaptations of them are some of my favourite things just in existence. The Greta Gerwig Little Women film is perfection. I've only seen it twice, to be fair. I saw it at the BFI when it first came out, and I've got it on Amazon Prime now too. And the older BBC adaptation of Emma with Johnny Lee Miller playing Mr. Knightley is just one of the most glorious miniseries that's ever existed. I didn't like the film of it as much, and I think that's because it's a lot shorter than the TV series, so they had to obviously cut out quite a lot, and it was much more heightened. The costumes and the colour and the acting and everything was sort of almost like caricature-ish, whereas the TV show was really just straight up, these are people. But I need to read the books, because how on earth can I say that Little Women and Emma are some of my favourite stories if I haven't read the original text? I can go comparing the TV show and the film to each other, but I don't know if they're actually good adaptations because I haven't read the book. If you've read any of the books that I've talked about but haven't read myself, let me know what your thoughts are. If you know anything about my reading taste, let me know if you think I'll like them. I think I will like them. I haven't read anything by Louisa May Alcott, but obviously Jane Austen's one of my favourite writers. Pride and Prejudice. Yes. Anywho, thank you so much for coming here today, for listening to my rambly bambly thoughts about all of these things. I have mentioned To Kill a Mockingbird in a previous video that I did for Penguin. It was more of an educational one, so I will leave that linked down below. And I've also done a video showing my Philip Pullman collection over on my channel. Since then it has expanded a lot, but if you want to hear my thoughts a little bit more on Philip Pullman, then feel free to go watch that as well. That's linked down below too. I will be back with you for another very, very exciting video in December. I'm so hyped for that one. I gotta go on a trip to make it. Anyway, thank you so much. Mwah. Take care and stay safe and don't die, guys.